interest in the people coming from space, you know.
Trump was on that track.
Yeah.
He was talking about UFOs constantly, almost. So like every 6 months, he would, you know, and a lot of it was people asking him questions. But, you know, I think he's the first president since Truman that has admitted that he was briefed on UFOs.
How much did they tell you about that?
A lot.
Really?
He kept bringing back up this UFO subject. He asked him about Roswell, and he asked him about Area 51, and he gave some evasive but nudge, nudge, wink, wink answer about it, basically acknowledging that, this stuff is out there, and it's important.
I interviewed jet pilots that were solid people. Perfect. I mean, great pilots, great everything. And they said, we saw things, sir, that were very strange.
These cases that are real, about real UFOs. I mean, these two cases that he had were about actual contacts, ET contacts, where we had pictures and we had evidence.
I'm Steve Mayer of The Big Picture, and I would like to welcome probably two of the most talked about guys on the internet within this subject, and that is Mr. Mike Bara and Mr. Richard Doty, which are both here with me today. Thanks, guys, for coming along, and it is a great opportunity to be able to actually discuss about some of the things in the big worlds of the UFOs, or the UAP, if that's what we want to call it now. And of course, you come from completely different backgrounds, and I like that. Well, it's going to be interesting because your viewpoints regarding some of these matters that people have been facing and asking me over the last 3-4 years. Now, most people will know that they're the subject of UFOs, UAP, especially when talking with families, they're like the elephant in the room situation, you know. But that has changed somewhat, you know, because I can kind of go into my family now and go, no, you know, because something ended up on the news saying that UFOs, UAPs, whatever one they call them, are real. Now, what's the impact of that? Now, I'd like to find out first from Richard, because from your background, it's a very visual background, and I'm not going to go into it because most of our listeners, if not all of them, will probably know your background. How did that impact you? All of a sudden, it's all over the television. People might be asking questions. Was you aware of that was coming? Was you any inkling of that was going to happen?
Well, going back some years before the release, our group, and I'm a member of a group of retired intelligence officers, former and retired intelligence officers. Yeah. And we've been together since the late 90s. And we're trying to get disclosure out. And that's why I speak at UFO conventions. We met Senator Reid when he was in the Senate. Senator Harry Reid from...
And this is kind of where it started, yes?
Right. In the Senate. He was a majority leader, actually, at the time we met him during the Bush administration. And we met him at a conference. It was somewhat quasi-private conference in Salt Lake City. And he came in to be a guest speaker. And there were only about 80 people in the room, and almost all of them were the retired intelligence officers.
Right.
And this was in 2006, 2007 timeframe. And he brought up the Nimitz incident, which has happened. Oh, right. It happened a couple years prior to that. And very few of us in the room knew about it. I mean, there was some other, I didn't know about it at the time, but some others did. And then jump ahead, we were invited to a small meeting of a couple of us other senators, both he's a Democrat. Harry's a Democrat, but also some Republicans. We went to Washington, D.C., actually Landover, Maryland, and we sat down and talked in a room. And this is just before the ATEP stuff came out.
Right.
And then he didn't tell us it was coming out, but he kind of hinted that the Navy was going to present something.
Okay.
And then, of course, it happened. Of course, we were somewhat startled by it, the fact that it was almost sanctioned and the way it was presented.
Yeah. And straight to the newspapers, of course.
Straight to the newspapers.
Which is unheard of normally, especially those newspapers.
But if you want to dig back after the release, there was a radio program in Washington, D.C., a morning show. It was a male and a woman and a man doing a show, and they were interviewing this Pentagon spokesman.
Oh, right.
And they were asking him all sorts of questions about, more information. Is more information coming out? And the spokesman said, and I'm almost quoting him, "We can only put out what the intelligence agency gives us."
Mm-hmm.
end of quotes.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of odd that statement was made. And of course, jump ahead to
no denial.
And jump ahead to the incident, the airing of it, the analysis of it. I was never in the Navy. I was Air Force. So, but there were intelligence officers that had been in the Navy. In fact, we had a admiral, a one-star admiral, a one-stripe admiral, they call him, rear admiral, on our group. And when he analyzed it, the first thing he said was, when the information came out that the F-18s that were supposed to be on alert protecting.
Here's what I found online.
We have contact already.
Wow. This is turned off.
That's okay, Richard. Yeah, I don't know if they're not listening in, yeah?
Your friends are just letting you know they're around, Richard.
Wow. Yeah. Anyways, he said the startling information he got is these two aircrafts are supposed to be on a ready alert.
Yes.
And they didn't have any weapon systems on board. And now jump ahead to that.
Well, they didn't know. That's
they
right,
didn't.
Yeah.
Jump ahead to the Navy lieutenant who's now a bank manager in Provo, Utah, who comes out. He was there at the time and says, 2 days before this happened, some civilians came on board the aircraft, ordered that all weapon systems be turned off. The aircraft's unarmed for this incident.
Why do you think that would be?
I don't know. I'm going to jump ahead to Mike.
I think we should
Mike,
go over to Mike.
Mike's going to tell us.
Mike, I know you've got a keen nose for these
let's
things.
Say
yeah?
if you were, you had a secret unmanned combat air system, like the Joint Unmanned Combat Air System X-47B that I was consulting on in 2003 or something.
I remember the X-33 years back.
Or which is basically a drone aircraft, military drone, not the little kind that you fly around your sailboat and put YouTube videos on, but the big kind, the big stuff. But let's say you had one that was more sophisticated than the publicly being developed ones, like the one I worked on, and you wanted to test it. It seems to me that you would test it in probably a military testing range, which would be, I don't know, somewhere off San Diego where this stuff all happened, and you probably wouldn't tell your own military guys that you were going to test it. And it's weird because there's descriptions of, there was something in the water there was a bunch of foam or something in the water. There was like a ship or something, and they don't know what that was. Well, to me, that's the carrier. So what you do is you put this thing on a little mini carrier to launch this drone. You probably launch it remotely. You want to test your systems, and you want to see how the military reacts.
So basically, it's just like when you've got say an army squad that goes out to a hike in the forest. You're not going to tell them halfway through that they're going to be suddenly jumped by another team of soldiers.
Exactly.
You want a realistic thing to unfold to see how people react. Yeah?
Exactly. And the things I see on the video are not more sophisticated than the program I was working on in 2003. And so I would say it's about the same performance envelope, and it looks like that's what I think this really was. And now that I know what he just told us, what Richard just told us, I'm like, okay, that reinforces it even stronger.
I mean, it does. I mean, the more you actually look into this, the more things start screaming back at you. It isn't exactly what it might be or how it's being explained to be. One interesting thing I did come across was a document, an Israeli document, official document. Now, the Israeli documents, in regarding UFO incursions and things, they don't hide the fact that they put UFO on the documents. They've never been afraid to say UFO, UFO, UFO. They've done it many, many times. There was one from 2015 that talked about their pilots having to scramble because of drones, CIA drones, which were over their facilities, and they'd scrambled jets to try and chase them away. But it was a waste of time because they could never catch up. These are so fast that if you hadn't even said drones, you'd immediately think, it's UAP or UFO. But it was only the fact that they actually said CIA drones, and I thought, well, why would they do that? They'd have no problem saying UFO in the back, many times before. But actually saying CIA drones monitoring their facilities, and it was a waste of time even them scrambling the jets because they were just outmaneuvered with incredible speeds and incredible maneuvers.
Yeah, because the airframe can take so much more than a pilot can. So it's literally like a video game. There's a guy sitting somewhere in a room in California flying this thing around, probably, or it could. The artificial intelligence is good enough that they could probably just fly independently. But you know, you assume there's a pilot remotely connected via satellites, and that airframe can take far more punishment than a human being can.
Well, I remember when I first saw the images, and these are detailed drawings, which was first done, the first documentary from somebody who had interviewed the pilots, and they had drawn for them how, what the Tic Tac looked like. There were some unusual prong things underneath it. Now, they seem to have disappeared on everything further I've seen. I only originally saw them in the kind of first bits of information that came out. And I did actually look at them, and I thought to myself, they look a lot like pit-top tubes.
They do.
Strangely enough.
Yeah,
and what for the audience, do you know what pit-top tubes are? Can you explain what pit-top tubes are for? And you tend to find them on those type of unmanned piloted vehicles,
right?
For GPS, and gives you all sorts of different things. And I thought, well, it's got 4 of them on, and I thought that's unusual. It doesn't look. I don't see many things like that on what you might refer to as alien tech.
Yeah. Not a lot of antennas and landing gear. You don't usually see that. So you're right.
But there are people that said that they've seen some of these things, and of course I've got some recordings which we've seen from Mexico, the shorelines of Mexico. So there are some things flying around, and they are unusual the way they move, and they are silent. But the big question is, are they truly UAP or UFOs, as they want to say? Why do you think? What's the great effort, do you think, now, guys? Why all of a sudden? I mean, we've been crying out for disclosure, many people in this subject for many years, and when that happened, they jumped to the roof. They thought, oh, it's finally happening. But is it finally happening? Because, this is how we want to perceive what disclosure is. And is it even a disclosure, or is it because many people have suggested, that who I've talked to over the years, that there has been these drone wars happening. What's your take on the drone situation? Do we have all these multiple countries like China and Russia now with their drones as well, which really look profound? I've seen a lot of the blueprints and things, that from the designs of these things, but they're saying that there's a lot of drone stuff happening now.
Well, jump back to my early days in intelligence in the late 70s and 80s at Kirtland Air Force Base. A case that I ran regarding Paul Benowitz, what he was seeing out in a remote area, that test range area, was drones. It was the very, very first experimental project for the Air Force with drones. Now, back in those days, and Mike will know this because he worked at Boeing, the drones were launched out of airplanes close by.
To the wings.
EC-135 airplanes, which is basically 707s. And the plane would have to be controlling it, and it had to be in close proximity. So these drones are flying around, and for a ground observer, there's a UFO flying around that plane.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, and that's what Paul Benowitz saw. The jump ahead, our technology had advanced nowadays. If you go out to Nevada, if you can park outside Creech Air Force Base, you can, or if you go north and park outside off
the good
Highway
places.
6.
The good
I know all that.
Park,
We just did a documentary on it, so we're going to see that here. And you can see drones flying all over the place, and they're highly sophisticated drones now.
That's the future, do you think?
I think that's the
seem
future.
That way. Yeah.
I think Boeing had I think at least 2 projects regarding domes that I knew of. And Mike worked for them longer than I had.
Yeah.
I actually worked out of college. My first job was with a subsidiary of Boeing that sold the aircraft. So I didn't have anything to do with the technology.
Oh, right.
But I knew where the secret building was. Right. You knew where the secret building was too. So, but I think the technology is going to be advanced to the point where you're going to take the pilots out of the cockpit. We have fighter planes being tested at Tonopah and Groom Lake that are all remote. The planes will take off and they're controlled by the ground controllers. It's not going to. We don't have to worry about gravity or G. Yeah, the G forces. We don't have to worry about any of this stuff.
No, so that actually puts away the problem regarding the sort of inertia. What's your take on it, Mike? Working at Boeing, and you come across drones.
Well, my take on this stuff is: did anybody watch Battlestar Galactica? Have you heard of the Cylons? Have you seen Terminator 2, Judgment Day? I mean, my God, what are we messing with? But I mean, I remember seeing in 2006, I saw a presentation by a guy who worked at some defense agency. And he showed us pictures of them actually splicing human brain cells, neurons, onto computer circuit boards in 2006. Wow. Okay, so that's
2006.
Nearly 20 years ago now, 17 years ago, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
So if they were working on that stuff then, and they just felt like it would increase the performance of the computer circuits by even greater amounts, or that they could then plug this into a person, and and this is stuff that they've been talking about and working on for many, many years. But I just think to myself, at what point do you get a Cylon? I mean, at what point do they always turn on their creators? Yeah.
I know that we're getting, bits and bobs that come through in the press and stuff, and like, well, we've got computers now that can beat us at chess and all sorts of different things, and they're getting better and getting better and better. That's the stuff we do now. I always think to myself, well, how long does it take until that to get to the mainstream? What technology do we currently have?
20 years probably.
It's got to be, because some years back, I started out in engineering and telecommunications, and signed a couple of secret acts, and I was working on the guys nicknamed them bio boards. And this was 29 years ago, and it was a project between NATO and Marconi. And it was something to do with three very large satellites, unlisted, I believe, satellites in orbit. And I was working on the racking systems with these cards, and these cards will look like the very large cards that you might find in a tower computer, for an example.
Right.
But on them, and why they were called bioboards, is because the circuitry also had memory cells, which were biological memory cells.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, now I kind of get it, why you nickname them bio boards, and it was all automated. As soon as I lock these into the cabinet, they're automated. They link up directly to the satellites communicating with them. They flash out. When they say flash out, they pair, in a sense of, it's like the old days of Bluetooth thing, they kind of pair. And this thing, the satellite controls, because somebody's controlling the satellite to tell the information to. So somebody at the other end is obviously dealing with it,
right.
and the control of the satellite communicating with this. And I thought to myself straight away, wow, this technology's out. I didn't know that's going to be great, because it's going to be in everybody's computers. I'm still waiting now. And of course, I never talked about it. I never would ever talk about it, because I thought, I signed 2 official secret signs not to do so. But I remember about 5-6 years ago, I was reading on the internet that IBM are going to be releasing plasma memory cells. And I thought, bingo. That's what they are. And I thought, well, if it's out on the internet, I'm okay to come across it. Have you come across technology? Have you ever heard of technology?
Oh, well, yeah. Let me tell you a story about when I first came in intelligence in 1979. We were deployed to do something, and I got my first laptop. This is late December 1979.
Okay, 79.
We got laptops made by IBM. 1979.
So it was as big as a suitcase and weighed 70 pounds.
And we were able to send hyperburst system, only 100 bits on a message, but from one point to another, or from one computer to another. So jump ahead, when was the first laptop? In the early 90s.
Yes.
So the military industrial complex will get the real neat stuff before it ever is filtered out into society or the public.
And this sort of technologies, obviously.
Right.
How many years ago when we heard about a rat brain was flying a military aircraft, and testing. And I think to myself, okay, well, that's what we do know now. It's out in the press, we know now. But how far are they really in advance is the big question. And of course, if they're pushing all this into, this technology into drones, that might explain quite a number of things in recent times. What is interesting to me is that, we've moved away from the old Area 51 hypothesis that they're all hanging out there and that sort of thing. But I thought to myself, it is a perfect place. Is it the new Area 52 in a sense of speaking? Because, you're out at sea, nobody can see anything. You haven't got, the ships, normal ships passing by or normal flights flying over. It's kind of a militarized testing ground in a sense of speaking. And I think to myself, what an ideal location to conduct those tests. Because the Navy, I'd have said, if you look through the history of UFOs, the Navy has a very, very strong presence in the subject of UFOs right from the start, you know. And I thought to myself, well, that's a perfect location.
Yeah, the Office of Naval Intelligence has been involved in studying this stuff for, since the 50s, really. Yeah. I think we gave an example in the talk yesterday about T. Townsend Brown presented to the Navy, his flying saucer idea. So,
well, I would have thought that would have been the Air Force, but no.
But he presented, it said, I think actually his project, the cover of it said U.S. Air Force, it was a flying saucer, but he presented to the Navy, and,
Right. That's interesting. So the information that came out, general press will pick it up on, and the people all around the world saw the videos. Still being pushed now as legitimacy over these videos.
Although I see Tom DeLonge is going back on tour. So he must have run out of money.
He must have ran out of money. He was $37 million.
Not to be snide.
All right, I think, when I look at those things, and I think to myself, okay, well, the average Joe Blogs is not going to... This is targeted for the average Joe Blogs. They won't have any idea what they're looking at, to be honest. And it's to swing their opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it's really important that I don't know. I feel compelled to point out reality, which is that there's nothing exceptional about what's on these videos.
These are questions that anybody should be asking.
Right, but not everybody knows to ask them.
No.
I mean, I have a really strong BS meter, and there's just something about it that never felt right to me. And then when they brought forth certain spokesmen that I didn't really trust.
Well, my view on this one. I mean, it was. They took one of my photographs.
Can we talk about it?
Absolutely.
Can we say their name?
Yeah.
Can I?
I mean,
Can I say Elizondo? Can I say that out loud?
Well, he was there amongst
but I mean, look,
other people.
The thing is, he's an Army counterintelligence grunt.
I think
that's
some were just drawn in, though. I mean, you've worked with Professor Hal Potter.
Yes, I have.
Hal's a nice guy, and I don't think he would have been sat there with that 180-foot screen behind him with a mylar balloon.
If he knew, it was a mylar balloon.
Yeah. Here's the. Of course, I was a counterintelligence officer also.
I never said you were a grunt.
No, but
Army grunt. That's not
I understand, but
you're the elite.
I ran. We don't call them disinformation operations. We call them deception operations with misinformation. Yeah. But anyways, if I was going to plan some kind of operation involving the Tic Tac videos, this would follow. Well, I would have started. Yeah, I think there's so many aspects of this that cries out to counterintelligence officers that this is disinformation. And why did some of the people?
Well, you saw the names of those guys.
Yeah,
that were up there on stage.
They're all there.
You got them all there.
Yeah.
It sounds unreal, doesn't it? That they're not aware that there's someone somewhere should have been doing the check-in, somebody asking.
Right. Well,
I mean, that's the first thing I do if I'm going to involve myself in anything like that. Is what am I being part of here, and what is it? Are you going to be showing what photos? Where have they come from? Be asking questions before I want to put my face on international television about it.
Well, I didn't realize the analysis until Mike's presentation yesterday, which is really extraordinary.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I didn't realize all the idiosyncrasies that Mike brought out until then. I mean, I knew there were questions, but not as detailed as Mike's presentation was. And this opens up a lot of questions now. I mean, it really enforces my opinion that it was all staged or it was being conducted unbeknownst to the crew. Now, Kevin Day, I've known Kevin Day. He worked in the Combat Operations Center. I've spoke to him many times.
He seems very sincere.
He's very sincere.
I checked. I looked at his interviews, and he was clearly bothered by this.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And when these two civilians come in later on and took all the radar tapes, he talks about that made me suspicious. Who are they? The men in black?
Yeah, and they weren't told. The pilots weren't informed not to talk about it.
But if it was like Mike said, it was some kind of an operation to test their combat readiness or whatever it is. Yeah, this is how you would do it.
Because I would have thought, well, you know what's happened here today stays here and it doesn't go anywhere else, and we don't want you to talk about it. That would be the normal routine in the past.
Yep.
If anything like that happened, because we know that's happened.
And the thing too is that you have this they sat on this stuff for like 10 or 15 years. So they were waiting for the right time to release this and put it out. And waiting for the right cast and crew, waiting for the right time
newspaper cooperation, because that has to have been.
The thing is, it's an attempt to create a narrative. It's transparently trying to create a certain narrative. And, again, I think I don't think I'm particularly exceptional. I think most guys that know planes and stuff would look at these videos and go, I don't think that's a flying saucer or an alien spacecraft. But there's this narrative that's trying to be created. And then you start digging into, okay, well, what's the narrative? Well, the narrative is aliens bad because it's a threat.
It was in there in the title,
right? And so that's the narrative. Aliens bad, which they may be. I mean, I think that aliens are kind of like people. There's probably some good ones and some bad ones. And I mean, I don't know. I don't have any personal experience, thank God. So if it's aliens bad, then is it part of what Von Braun talked about, which is the fake alien invasion scenario or whatever?
Actually, funny enough. Yes.
But here's the thing that really gets me about that is, okay, if that's the track we're on, then that means that there's a conflict behind the scenes that we're not seeing between two sides. And I'm not going to call one the good and one the bad.
No.
I think I know who the good guys are, but I'm fully prepared to be wrong.
Yeah.
But there's a side that I like and a side that I don't like. I'll put it that way. But then if the guys that are in power are afraid of losing power, then if they've now pulled the trigger on this, doesn't that imply that they're ready to go to that alien invasion scenario, which is the last thing? And that's a sign to me of desperation. And when people get desperate, then that's when you have fake nuclear wars and, I mean, all the stuff that we're seeing in the headlines today. So I think that the conflict that's being displayed by the simple publishing of this information and tacit acknowledgement that it's real in some sense, it is actually fairly alarming to my mind.
A few things have changed since then. I mean, Elizondo's not with the TTSA anymore, as far as I'm aware.
Well, do they even exist anymore?
Well, exactly. Well, only on paper, I think.
Only on paper, and I think Lou is working for U.S. Space Force.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he is. Okay.
All right.
I'm.
Dang, I want one of those Space Force jobs. I want to be a consultant. I want one of those $174,000 a year government consulting jobs.
So, do you think it's run its course, guys, or do you think that's just a?
The thing is that, like I said, there's got to be more. There should be more drops to come. There should be more stuff coming. I mean, the Corbell video was another one that got dropped.
I initially thought it's all about money. Because it usually is.
Right. Usually is.
And defense money.
Why would the Pentagon cooperate with that if it was just about money? I mean,
well, I was thinking that what did he want? I mean,
maybe
I know that he's been mithering and trying to get the weaponizing of space, and of course there was a space treaty act that's stuck in the way of that sort of thing. And I know that there've been efforts to do this on an official capacity. I'm talking about non-official, because there's probably stuff already up there.
Right.
Okay. But at some point, something has to become official. At some point to say, okay, this is what is going to be happening, and that I would kind of imagine would be a lot of money.
Trump was on that track.
Yeah.
He was talking about UFOs constantly, almost. So like every 6 months, he would, and a lot of it was people asking him questions. But, I think he's the first president since Truman that has admitted that he was briefed on UFOs. And he asked, I've been briefed on this and that and the other thing. And, he was very vague.
He was, right,
very general terms. But he kept bringing back up this UFO subject. And, Don Jr. did an interview with him, I think in 2020. He asked him about Roswell and he asked him about Area 51. And he gave some evasive but nudge wink answer about it, basically acknowledging that this stuff is out there and it's important. So I mean, and then we had the changeover in public anyway. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I think this is all signs of tremendous conflict taking place behind the scenes. And Richard would know more about it than me, but I see it from the outside looking in. I just see conflict between at least two factions in intelligence about which direction is this or is this narrative going to go, and I'm fascinated.
Well, it's, that's the right thing. It's a natural thing to ask and challenge, and because we should get the information. If this is groundbreaking information, it should be out there. and you should see all the information that we request.
Well, and the thing too is, another thing that, don't they have any better UFO video than if they really wanted?
I remember Hal Puthoff saying, you know what, he was aware that there were lots of photographs taken, colour photographs taken. I haven't seen any.
No, and again, and then people go back to, but they saw 40 Tic Tacs in the air descend from 80,000 feet. Like, oh, that's great. We have these reports of people saying this stuff, but we don't have any evidence of that. I can only operate on the video that's put right in front of me. And when I look at that, I'm like, drone, you know?
Well, yeah, everything was screaming.
Here's another problem within government. You have so many different agencies that must come together and cooperate to give up what they have in the files. And let me give you an example. A few months ago, Lou Alzando contacted me and asked me if I would agree to talk to somebody within the Department of Defense Inspector General's office. Oh, okay. I said, sure. I don't have anything to hide. I'll talk to him. Mm-hmm. So I had a couple conversations. The first conversation I had was a mediocre, just interested in what I did. They kept referring to things they had about me, my cases, but nothing specific. A couple of weeks later, they called me, and we took and one of the people, I won't mention his name, but he wanted to ask me questions about 2 case files, and he started talking to me about the case files, and I realized that he's talking about cases that I did, and I said to him, so
that's something.
I said, well. That is my case. I did that in 1982. I said, give me the case number. And he gave it to me. I said, yeah, I did that case. He said, and he started asking me a roundabout questions, not direct questions, because we're on the phone. And I said, well, is that still classified? He said, the markings on it is. But he's asking me encrypted questions. And I said, well, why don't you just read the report? Those questions are in there. Well, I can't because it's redacted. I said, well, what? I said, you're the Department of Defense Inspector General's office, and you can't get a cleared report from the U.S. intelligence? Yeah. He said, yeah, we can't. They send us stuff over, but it's all redacted.
So he can't get it. Lou was obviously looking to see some back door.
Department of Defense Inspector General, and they can't get a clear report. That's an example of the bureaucracy within the Department of Defense and within the government.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite surprising, isn't it?
Yes, really? Yes.
So, of course, obviously, they were trying to get you more information about certain things.
Well, they wanted me to come to work for them, but I said, no, I'm not interested. I would
How
not
long ago was this? Sorry?
This is just a few weeks ago. A few months ago. A month and a half ago.
You've kind of been there and done it, haven't you, really?
Yeah.
You know,
so I'm not interested. I make a lot more money on the outside. You're not going to pay me what I'm making.
And why would you want to put yourself back on that?
Well, and then, of course, I would have to sign it. NDA, and I would never do that. And maybe 3 or 4 days later, they contacted another person who was within our group and did the exact same thing to him, because he called me up on Signal. Everybody, I don't know if everybody has Signal. Somewhat secure. He calls me and he says, "You ain't gonna believe what I just got a phone call." I said, "Well, did they call you?" "Yeah, and they had my reports too." I said, "Would they talk to you about the reports?" He said, "I told them no, I'm not going to talk about it." I said, "You fly me to Washington, D.C., and I'll do it, but I'm not going to talk about it even over Signal."
Trying to do something then in the background, and
well, they're getting these cases that are real about real UFOs. I mean, these 2 cases that he had were about actual contacts, ET contacts, where we had pictures and we had we had evidence,
right?
And so he wanted to ask me these questions about this case, but I said, it's all in that report. Well, it's redacted.
Don't you think maybe these are just guys in a job? You know, I mean, you know how things work. You know, Boeing, private business. Boeing was not one company. It was like 4 or 5 or 6 companies, really. And I remember one time when I was at Northrop, I had to come in because I worked for one side of the company. I had to come in to support engineers over the Christmas break who weren't working. So I'm supporting people, you know, because that was how stupid some of the rules were. Don't you think it's maybe just some guy who's curious, who wants to find out about, I want to find out about UFOs. So maybe he's some guy who comes across your name or has access to certain levels I mean, do you think it really represents?
It does a bit.
Does it represent a policy or an agenda or an objective, or is it just some guy wanting to? Oh, I'm going to pick this guy's brain.
Well, that's a good point. That's an excellent point. I mean, I know he worked there, but I don't know what. Whether he was officially.
It gets complicated because obviously there was the other program, the main program that was ATIP was associated too. But how strong was ATIP? How much work was required? What position did he hold?
Well, here's the problem: the $22 million. What that was just what they told the public. The actual, as Harry Reid tells George Knapp, it was 20 times that.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Okay, because that's interesting. Because I always had that question. It's like $22 million. That's nothing. I mean, so I look at it and I'm like, oh, this is a money laundering scheme for Harry Reid.
Right.
I'm gonna funnel $22 million to my friend Bob Bigelow. He's going to contribute $236,000 or whatever the maximum is to my campaign, and then I'm going to retire and take all that money and put it in my pocket. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
But now that you say that there were secretive, much bigger budgets,
they were. He was able to tap. He Harry Reid never explained fully. And of course, about the safety deposit box and the key at his deathbed. Oh, I'll tell you that story later.
No, I don't know.
Okay, but anyways, with the $22 million, which was officially appropriated by Congress, you have black projects, black confidential monies, they call it. So the intelligence community, they are allocated a certain amount of confidential funds, which isn't really tracked. It could be $15 billion is for research and development, intelligence operations, whatever. Within that budget, that's where ATIP got more money out of. Right. And although I don't know exactly how much, but Harry Reid said 20 times. We got 20 times that amount. So you do the math on that.
Yeah.
And
but what did he achieve? What did the ATIP do?
That's a good question.
I always like to see
it's classified.
It's classified.
Well, but would you piecemeal us this? Would you piecemeal us this Nimitz and the Roosevelt case? Give us whatever you guys.
Well, we don't even know if those. I don't think we even really know that those videos are related to
exactly. That's an absolute. Yeah. That's the key right there. We don't even know that those cases had anything to do with ATIP.
No, that's right. So, what were they doing? What was it all for? I haven't seen anything, and I would assume if they did have it, that Elizondo and co would have made an effort to actually have their information put out rather than. The tic-tac gimbal. Well, I think it's really important for anybody that's in the subject, because they're going to start really be able to identify there's another problem in the mix.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, this discussion is really fascinating to me because so few people in the UFO community ask these questions, and I'm like, am I the only guy who thought of this?
Well, I don't know why, because I used to say it's frustrating because I used to say, you know what, it was some of these blue book officers going back in time. You look at some of the old cases and think, well, you know what, some of them, I mean, they weren't great, to be honest with you, but some of them at least asked some questions, and I think, well, why aren't people asking the right questions? It's like acceptance, just immediate acceptance of it.
And because everybody wants FaceTime on CNN.
Yeah.
Maybe so, yeah.
I mean, the thing is...
Or Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, or Tucker Carlson. Sorry, I should have brought that up first, actually, yeah. I mean, I feel bad for Jeremy Corbell in a way because, he brought this video out and, he's on there talking about... And it's like, I can blow away the argument that's a flying saucer in about... like I did. I mean, I can do that. And I wish that people would run these things by. I think they're afraid of being scooped, though. They're afraid I'll take it and steal it and go out with it first. But I'm like, no, dude, I could have just told them, dude, that's something with a hot engine flying away from the ship and going over the horizon. That's all it is. Yep. And
what really is important that people caught on during your presentation was the direction of the ship. Nobody realized that. So many people said to me, wow, I didn't even realize this ship was going in that direction.
Something so simple.
Yeah. If you just
But they just follow the narrative of what they've been told.
Right. Which is actually scary because, I mean, the whole essence of what we try to do in, let's call it the UFO community, is get to the truth. But if people are so willing to sort of accept what they're told, that's not what I want. I want people to question me. I want because they're gonna maybe make me dig some, or to a place that I didn't think to go. So
well, it's certainly illuminated that we have another issue.
Yeah.
At large, and this is not an easy one. It's going to be resolved because many people think that we're going to get the truth from an official source, from the biggest newspapers, from the best reporters. That they obviously can't all be wrong. Well, you know what? They're getting information from somewhere. And like I say, when those two, and it had to be those two newspapers that were involved, and I thought to myself, they wouldn't normally touch the subject ever. Right. And all of a sudden, they're going to town on this. It looked like it'd been kind of set up. It looked like, okay, there's some agreement that's gone ahead.
Looked like that to you? It's exactly what it was.
Okay, there's some agreement. And then I expected Leslie Keane to come forward and say, I understand that, and say, yes, it's definitely. But she was kind of part and parcel of that, utilising her to pass the information forward. And I thought, well, I actually could draw a box of all the people that's involved in there, And it's a tiny little thing. It was gaining too much media coverage, to be honest with you. And it's just everywhere. It's blindsided a lot of ufologists, and that's maybe what we wanted to do. It's just completely blindsided, because the fact is that when it went to Congress and they were looking at this information, and when it was turned around and said, it made me giggle actually, that we need some more information. We need to look into this a bit more to try and assess what's going on. I was like, where have you been for the last 70 years? Surely we've got plenty of information about what is going on. And I thought, and of course, Tidally came in with the new word UAP to cover it seemed a little bit like a bit of a reboot,
when the government tries to change the language, I get very,
exactly
very
the same
skeptical.
way with me. Same with me. When a UAP came out, and we ask, why UAP? Well, it covers more areas than just UFO. Why? No, it's
mostly it was known in the meteorological industry.
UAP
stuff. I mean, it's no stranger there.
Yeah, that's the good point, Steve, because it's been in a meteorological terminology for years.
Yeah. It has. So now we've kind of just drifted over to the UFO.
To the UFO.
So the things such as the discussions on UFOs and old UFO reports and things like that, they exist. There's evidence for them. They've got the information, but that's not likely to be shared. So is it fooling Congress? Is it fooling the guys that are reading the documents? They requested more information. I'm not too sure what information that they actually got. I doubt that they probably would have got some really good stuff.
Well, let me tell you how the congressional hearings went. Well, they were a flop, as everyone knows. The two.
Yeah, I saw the videos they showed. That was a.
Oh, there's one on YouTube now about this. I don't remember who he is, but he really puts so much comedy into what these guys are saying. Well, these two people came to a Pentagon spokesman, and the other person came to answer questions, and they were totally baffled by the questions. Now, there were groups of us. We already submitted a number of questions, my group and Elizondo's group. And so there's so many different questions that I never got to. But listen to what the response was when they said, what about the Roswell incident? And they looked at each other and said, when was this? What?
Kids at school.
What was it? Roswell incident. You know about the Roswell? And some of the other incidents or crash retrieval of what? They were told. I mean, it was a joke. And then the Senate hearings were supposed to have occurred in September. Of course, they were postponed until spring. They're going to continue. Well, depending on who wins the Senate and the House, but. We have prepared better questions, and hopefully there's going to be people sitting in front of those microphones that know something about the historical aspect of this subject matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they will do. I mean, of course, what was interesting also was the release of that document of the projects, the money where the projects are going into, wormhole technology. There's some very interesting projects listed there, and I recognised the naming on them because it fitted so well with some of my research into the true aspects of UAP, and when we're talking about, time latencies and gravitational, anomalies and things like that. And I thought, okay, I can take that on board, that they're going to be looking more into those sort of things. And then NASA came out and announced that it was quite unusual announcement. Portals do exist, which was part of the MMS mission that they discovered that. They call it, what's the name now is electron diffusion regions. Yeah, that's it.
Electron diffusion regions.
Portals.
And they sent 5, I believe, small satellites about the size of a small mini Cooper, size, and they sent them up there for a number of years, about 3 years, looking at these. And they apparently stated officially that they're sustainable. Some of them are large. They don't know where they go to, if it's what's the
you got to put something in it, right? And hope it comes back.
I mean, the first thing I would do is send one of them through, and find out. Now, I did hear rumors that they had done, and but you don't know how true these things are.
Yeah.
It's the biggest problem. But it went very quiet. There's no more information from MMS about these portals are real sort of thing, But that maybe lent hand to some of these discoveries, because what we're finding out in the UAP phenomena is that they are manifesting on a lot of occasions and demanifesting as if they're 1 minute they're there, the next minute they're not. Other people are reporting them. There's a lot of fake stuff on videos out there, but there are incidents where people have that. But that's not just traditionalistic to UFO phenomena. It's mystical. It's ancient in times, those stories of things popping in and out of realities, And now we've got Harvard professors going forward and saying that now we know there's another reality right next door to us. And when they asked by reporters how did they know that, they said we can tell due to gravitational anomalies. And I thought that was really interesting. So I thought, okay, so we've got all this money that's going into these other special projects now. Have you ever heard of these projects before? Do you know anything about these projects?
When I was at Area 51 for the 2 time periods I was there, I was a counterintelligence officer for a lot of real highly classified projects. One dealing with time travel, and the other dealing with trying to shooting high energy lasers, and I'm not going to give away any secrets here, but they bombard a certain area with particular types of gases like argon and things, and then they shoot a laser into it, and this is supposed to open the portals. And while I was there, I saw a lot of this type of activity. I don't know if they were ever successful. Everything was compartmented. I was a counterintelligence officer, but I never got the results. I never read the results. I didn't have access to the highly classified R&D report. So I don't know if they were ever successful. I saw these things occurring, especially the time travel one, which I thought was quite extraordinary, because they'd built at Nevada test site a huge magnets. 2 of the largest magnets in the world are underground at the Nevada test site. And they were, again, shooting lasers and all sorts of things into that. And they actually opened up fabric of space at one particular time, but it's only open for a nanosecond. Yeah. And then if you try to push something through there, it's going to disintegrate
it. CERN and things like that.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Putoff and I have been at CERN, and I've been there twice, watching different things going on there. That's extraordinary, what they can do there.
I can imagine.
Oh, yes.
I know. I can also say that, there are time latencies in residue phenomena, which is left by some forms of manifestations, not just on the UAP stuff, but on the paranormal aspects of things. I mean, apportations that appeared in the newspaper from 1936, analysed by the best guys in the country. In the UK, they said, yeah, it's authentic. It's an authentic newspaper in mint condition from 1936. That's the best way we can describe it. But it aged roughly 500 days per day. And it wilted and went brown so quickly, they could work out, because they got the guys in from the newspapers and said, okay, and this is kept in a sealed container. It's not just out in the open. This is a sealed container. And the best guys came in from the newspapers and said, well, the degradation on this newspaper, we can say that to get it from mint to this condition, under the period of time you've had it, it's aged 500 days per day. And then until it's to the point where it's kind of caught up as if you just found a old paper from 1936 in its scat condition. And that was fascinating because they actually did a full report on that. So time association with some of these things, well, according to where they're coming from, whatever they be, has differences, which makes it really interesting. So also it's been in the news recently is, because this should be straight up your alley, Mike, Saturn. Between Saturn's rings, unusual moons. Yeah, now I see one there which looks very, very unusual.
Well, there's this, there was this radio source, transmitter source from the 1970s. They used to call it the thing in the rings, and I think actually my old buddy Richard Hoagland wrote an article about it for a news magazine back in the late.
But now
70s.
we're seeing something, aren't we?
And now they're seeing something there. And there's always been the suspicion that there's something artificial there, and in the over complexities of the hyperdimensional model, Saturn's very significant. It's an indwelling point, a point where if you want to get out of this solar system through some portal means, that's a good place. That would be the place you would go. And that Saturn has some, important connection. We know it connects in a lot of mythology, and there's, there's probably fundamental reasons for that in terms of the physics of how the large gas giants planets affect consciousness and physics and things like that. So
they've got some images up on the internet now of some of these moon, I know, whatever it is.
Whatever they are,
and it's shaped, it's round, and it's got this stone.
Saw that.
It looks crazy. It's just like a mini Saturn.
So the thing is, though, is it at this point, is it
I don't know.
Is it ours or theirs? I mean, in the 1960s, if we spotted this, we could probably say it's somebody else's. But now we've got technologies, I think, that I believe we've demonstrated that they could easily be our own stuff.
Well, I mean, some of these things are associated to probably tech associated to ancient old asteroids and things like that. I mean, what about Avi Loeb? I mean, when he talks about obviously that very strange object that did a flyby out from outside, went round, and it seemed to made a course adjustment to get around the sun.
The or whatever it was. And it came in so fast and left so fast, and appears to be this long cigar-shaped object, which there's just no really good way that you can think of to form that. You think of Rendezvous with Rama or something like that.
But it's not much different. It's not much a far stretch to looking at some of the very old and small moons in our solar system that look to have something or had something on them.
Yeah, well, like Iapetus is one of the moons of Saturn is bizarre. It appears to have an angular makeup. It's like very evenly spaced horizon that goes in straight lines, like a dodecahedron.
If someone was to ask me, I'd say, no, what, out there's been busy at one time. It was a busy place at one time.
Yeah, and but who knows how old these things are? They could have been there for.
We can't imagine the length of time. We only measure our time here on Earth. I mean, 40 years ago, me working as object seems a long time. There's nothing. You compare it to everything, that's around us. So I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming along. I mean, that's, we are dealing with some very unusual times at the moment with the subjects of UAP, shall we say, the new name. We'll have to see where that's going. But you know what? You be the guys I'll be on to try and figure it out, because, like you say, you're good at identifying because you've been involved in that side. And basically, you just got a nose for the BS, mate. I mean,
it's like you and me, we vibe because you're the same way.
Well,
you're like, wait a minute.
You've got to ask questions. So when you come into the subject and you do this, it's about asking questions. It's not about standing back and ignoring it.
No, I come to my increasingly bizarre conclusions about the nature of space and the aliens in the universe by asking a whole lot of questions. That's how I get there. I'm finally decided that's a face on Mars after 150 questions.
If you like this video and you want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out the next video on our channel.